don't look at the 2,000 something kilometres. Let's get to that first power pole. Break it down into tiny little pieces that you can cope with mentally. And that's a really good way to approach everything in life.
Today's guest, Lisa Tamati, was famous for running races that just make you think, what the hell? She's the first Kiwi woman to run the infamous 217-kilometre Badwater Ultramarathon race through the hottest desert on Earth. But her ultimate test of her resilience was when her mother became ill, and every doctor said those horrible words, "There's nothing more we can do." This is the incredible story of Lisa Tamati, Indigenous 100. Lisa Tamati, thank you very much for being a part of Indigenous 100.
Thanks,
It's awesome to have you here.
Oh, it's lovely to be here.
And as I said, and I'll say it again, you're a little bit of a hero of mine. So for me anyway, it's wonderful. So welcome.
Thank you.
Ngā mihi nui kia koe. I suspect you've run further in one race in an ultramarathon than I have in my life.
Nah, can't be that bad.
No, I think it's true. And what I'm trying to understand is the why. Why run ultramarathons?
Yeah, that's a big question. Probably a hard place to start because it definitely in my young years. So, for the listeners, I did ultramarathon running for a long, long time, 25 years or so. In the beginning, it was a love for adventure. It was a love of deserts. It was also wanting to prove something.
So hang on. And apologies because you've already started to blow me away a bit here. A love of deserts.
Yeah. So
what's that about?
Well, I back in my early 20s, I was with this young man from Austria who was an extreme athlete, really talented athlete, and really into adventure. So we spent years cycling around countries, on cycle tours and climbing mountains and trekking and all of that sort of good stuff. And it was a rocky relationship, shall we say. It was a very difficult one, but I learned a lot about pushing my limits because he pushed me really hard. So it was like boot camp constantly, and I was never ever good enough. And so consequently, I think, I'd grown up sort of in a family where toughness was valued, where physical toughness was valued. I grew up with a bit of a hard-ass dad who was, a real hunt and shoot and fishing man, rugby playing, you had to be tough. Even if you were the girl of the family, that was no excuse not to be tough. So I sort of grew up with, wanting to please my dad, and then it turned into wanting to please the guy that I was with, and never being good enough, and never having much talent as an athlete or as a runner at all. And I was with him for a number of years, and the relationship ended up coming to an end in the middle of the Libyan desert. So that's a bit of an interesting story. Shall I go there?
The what? Sorry, the
Libyan desert.
You mean Libya, as in Libya, the country?
As in the border area between Egypt and Libya. So we were crossing a desert there, and it was part of a 4-person expedition, and it was 250 kilometres that we had to cover, and we had a maximum of 10 days to get through. It was a military barred area, so we weren't allowed to be there. It was really dangerous, really stupid. I was young and just naive, I think. Really, crazy place to be doing this sort of stuff in. And we had to sort of disappear out of this oasis into the desert and not try and get captured and stuff. And we had massive backpacks. We had no support from outside, meaning we had to carry everything on our backs. So we had only 2 litres of water a day, because that's all we could manage as far as, carrying it. So we had 20 litres each. And for that sort of a distance, that's only, 2 litres a day in those sort of temperatures. It was crazy.
How hot?
We're talking 40 degrees in the day, and then minus temperatures at night, really freezing temperatures at night. So you had these extremes, and it was a crazy beautiful desert. But it was brutal beyond, we were covering 45 kilometres a day, and my backpack was 35 kilos, and I weighed about 59 kilos at the time. So that was like 2/3 of my body weight, if you like, or nearly 2/3. And, if I fell over, the guys had to put me back on my feet because I was like a turtle, And the dehydration was really, really extreme. And my relationship, which had been very, very rocky, came to a bit of a head during this event because he wanted me to help with the photography because we were doing a book. And I just couldn't. I didn't have the energy to run around and take photos as well as, keep up and, do all this. And so he basically spat the dummy, and on day 4 he left us, buggered off, said relationship's over, and there was a big fight.
Well, hang on.
It's a big story.
Well, there's already 300 threads that I've picked up on here.
Yeah.
Hang on.
There's
so
a lot there.
You're with a guy. Are you engaged or?
Yeah, we were engaged, yeah, at that stage, yeah.
And you're going through Libya.
Yeah, Libyan desert. So
in a militarised zone.
Yep.
Whereby, so just make sure I got this right, whereby if you're captured, you're
in
going to a
deep,
pretty
deep
dark prison in Libya, which is, that's Gaddafi, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's on the border between Egypt and Libya. So it was partly Egypt, partly
right,
here,
okay.
but it's called the Libyan desert. And yes, you would have been in deep trouble. And being a woman, would have been even worse for me. So it was pretty out there.
And then you're out there, and because you don't want to take photos, he up sticks and takes off.
There's a little more to the story, but yeah, in essence, I was never good enough. In essence, I wasn't tough enough, I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't fast enough, I wasn't anything enough. I had weak genes, apparently.
Hang on.
Yeah, apparently. And the thing is, I believed all that crap back then, When I was a young girl, I didn't have a heck of a lot of self-esteem, and I didn't believe, I wanted to be accepted, I wanted to be cool, one of the cool kids, if you like, and I wanted to prove myself, and I kept, failing over and over again with him. So that was, and it came to a point where he decided he's ending the relationship, leaving me in the middle of the Libyan desert, where we're like extremely dehydrated, we're in deep trouble, all of us were in deep trouble from the dehydration, and that was the end of a 5-year relationship. That was a turning point in my life when I said, never again will I let someone take that much control over my life.
Wow. Okay, so let's finish this
Libyan
story.
Desert. Yeah, because this is just before
so
the
he
start
leaves, then what happens?
So then I fell to pieces momentarily, and then I thought, I can't cry, like I don't have enough energy or water to start bawling my eyes out, and I've got to pull myself together because there's 2 other guys here that really need me to be. So I learnt a lot about compartmentalising and controlling your emotions and getting through the situation and survival. And the upshot of it was we got through in 7 days, but it was really, really tough. And the dehydration was so bad that on the last day I was in deep trouble with, hallucinations, passing out, body starting to shut down, had major kidney damage afterwards. So you've got all these, things going on. And the boyfriend made it out as well. He survived. He was much stronger, faster, got through before us actually. But it was a turning point in my life where I went, I love this desert. So it was amazing terrain we were going through. It was amazing to know that you can cope in those situations and that you can get through, even though it wasn't fun at the time. And it took me 2 years to recover physically from that, let alone emotionally. It took me a lot longer. But physically it took me a couple of years to really recover. And then I heard about a race in Morocco, which is called the Marathon des Sables, and it's a famous ultramarathon. And back then it was in the early stages of its, being. And it was touted as the toughest race on earth. And I was looking at it and going, 240 kilometres, 9 litres of water a day, journalists, doctors, helicopters, airplanes, you've got all the support there. And you're running across the Moroccan Sahara, so not so dangerous, all legal. What's so hard about that? Like comparatively, if you like. So this was me 2 years later, I split up with the boyfriend and starting to rebuild my life, and I wanted to go and prove that I could still do something, if that made sense. And I loved the desert, so I thought, right, I'm signing up for this race. And I hadn't even done a marathon or anything at that stage. You know, I wasn't a runner per se. I'd do a bit of jogging, but that was it, you know. And then I went and did this race, and it was just a life-changing event in the positive. It was amazing people. It was like 700 runners from all around the world in this mammoth task to run across the Moroccan Sahara. And every day this whole camp moves, you know, so it's a multi-day stage race. You're carrying everything on your back, but you got given 9 litres of water a day. And it was such a positive experience that then I was like, oh, I love this, I've got to do more. And I got lots of reinforcement because lots of people were going, wow, you're really good at this, you know, you're awesome, amazing, and that's impressive, you know, which is what I really needed at that young age and that time in my life, if you like. So it gave my ego a boost and gave me some confidence, and I started to stand up a little straighter and think, yeah, I'm not that bad, you know? And then it was just an avalanche of one race after the other, and the rest is sort of history, yeah.
What are you thinking, though, day to day, you know?
When you're actually in it?
In it?
Yeah.
What goes through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, like the ultramarathoning is not about physical. It's you know, I'm certainly not a talented runner. You put me in a local 10K, I'll be in the middle of the race somewhere. What I did have was the mental strength to be able to just keep going, and I worked out over the time how to fuel my body, how to you know, hydrate it, how to keep myself going, you know, sleep deprivation, all of those sort of things. And the biggest piece of the puzzle is the mindset. How long can you fight that voice in your head that's telling you to stop, you know? What's your why? Understanding why you're doing something is the key to being actually how you do it. So for me, that became later on, I mean, for starters, it was wanting to prove myself to Dad, to him, to the world that I was something special, you know, or something cool. Later on, it turned into wanting to do things for charities and giving back, and, you know, so that became my why, if you like. So in the deep, dark times, you have to have prepared yourself mentally for the battle that you're going to go through in these events, and you will go through a battle somewhere in every single race. It doesn't matter what you're heading for. And you have to have prepared, and you have to understand what it is that you're prepared to go through. And then when you're actually in the battle, it's a matter of breaking it down. So I remember like standing on the start line when I was doing the run through New Zealand. So that was 2,250 Ks. I was trying to do it in 33 days. It took me 42 in the end, but so I was aiming for 70 Ks a day. And when I was standing at the start line in Bluff, and I'd been so busy with the preparation and organisation and sponsors and media and so on, that I actually hadn't thought about actually running 500 Ks a week, you know. And I was standing at the start line at 6 a.m. in the morning, about to start, and then it suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh shit, I've actually got to go and run 500 Ks, you know, per week. And I had a meltdown at the start line and had a panic attack.
Great preparation for it.
I'm always like, dive in. I've not been one for strategic thinking, you know. I've always like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, let's do that. And then worked out along the way how to do it, and gotten yourself in so deep, there's only one way to get out.
So you're literally about to go.
About to go, having a meltdown.
With people watching going, hey, this is awesome,
my
Lisa.
Crew
you're my hero. And yeah, hey, thanks for helping with this charity.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you're going,
I'm having a panic attack. And my mum was there. My mum was just my wonderful rock, you know. I went away from the crowd, the little crowd that was there at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I had a bawling session, and I hugged my mum and I said, I can't do it, Ma, I can't do it. What the hell was I thinking? And she just said to me, the best piece of advice I've ever had is don't look at the 2,000-something kilometres. Let's get to that first power pole. That's all you've got to do right now. You've just got to get to there through the first half an hour. Let's get your team, you know, on their routine, practiced and underway, and just break it down into tiny little pieces that you can cope with mentally. And that's a really good way to approach everything in life. When it becomes too big a mission for you, you break it into small little chunks that you can cope with today. Like if you're thinking of doing a degree, say, and it's 4 years or 10 years of study ahead of you, if you think about that, you're just like, oh, that's way too much. But if you think about this one assignment that I have to get through, or this one paper, or I've just got to get through this one exam or whatever, and you break it down into those small chunks, then you can achieve so much more that way.
Right. When does the voice, though, in your head that says you can't do this, you can't do this, when does that start to stop or cease? Is it after the
Never.
first? Every power pole.
The more tired your body gets and the more longer that you've been out there, the more sleep deprivation you've had, the more fatigue levels are starting to build, the louder that voice becomes. And so I call them the lion and the snake, yeah? And this is my analogy in my head. You've got, or you can call it the devil and the angel, whatever you want to call. You got the lion who's telling you, you're strong, you're courageous, you're going to be able to do this, we've got this, come on, keep fighting. And then you've got on the other side the snake just going, why don't you just sit down for 5 minutes? Look, there's a chair over there, just have a rest. Why the hell are you doing this? What's the point? No one's going to care if you quit. All of this sort of negativity. And it becomes a battle between those two voices in your head, and it's your willpower that gets you through, and your motivation, and understanding your why. And having committed to something, when you commit publicly to something, then you're more liable to see it through because you've put it out there, So using that accountability is another key sort of factor in this, so that you understand what motivates you to keep going to the next place.
So you applied that, because the run through New Zealand, I kind of get. What I don't get is going to Sahara Desert, Gobi Desert, Death Valley, the Himalayas. Because they're completely different sets of circumstances. The weather's completely different. All that kind of stuff. Did you apply the same formula?
Yes, definitely. It's all the same formula.
Despite the extreme differences in climate and environment and all the risks?
Yep. And I mean, I love being able to go to exotic, crazy places. I love to see other cultures, and not from a tourist point of view so much as from a really experiencing the environment point of view. The ones where I had most trouble was when I did the stuff in the Himalayas that I did, because I'm good in deserts, I'm good at heat, I'm good at when it's not so hilly, because I'm an asthmatic, I've got a small set of lungs, I've got a very low VO2 max, which means I don't have a good capacity to be an endurance athlete, basically. Like I did some testing.
Hang on. You knew you were an asthmatic before you became...
Yeah, I've been my whole life, yeah. Yeah, so it's not logical to be a runner, yeah. But deserts, on the other hand, I was better in because it was hot, dry climates, right? So I didn't get so many asthma attacks. When I decided I wanted to have a crack at stuff in the Himalayas, that was a different ballgame, because that's when asthma came into the scenario, and I was hopeless in the cold as well, and I was hopeless at climbing mountains because I had a small lung capacity. I don't have a big motor, if you like. So that was real challenging for me. Whereas deserts, I sort of fell in love with deserts. I could handle the heat really well. Not to say it was easy, but comparatively. So something like Death Valley, where you're running 217 Ks non-stop in 55 degrees heat, I coped, I wouldn't say it was easy or anything. Then there's a lot of walking too. Don't have this image in your head that you're running the entire time. It's run, walk, run, walk, run, walk, depending on the terrain that you're going through. So the ones in the Himalayas, I did one in the Indian Himalayas, and this was 222 Ks long over the two highest motorable mountain passes. So I had a crew, but we were at extreme altitude. That was fun and games. That was really, that was brutal. But all I knew was that this race had only been run once the year before, and only one guy had finished it, and no woman had finished it. And so all I heard when I heard about this race was, no woman's done it. I've got to be the first. So I get over there. I had a terrible build-up. I got this hypoxic training tent, which is what they use for altitude training, right? And I got it sponsored, and I was sleeping in it every night. And I rang up my ex-husband who had one of these, and I said, do I have to follow the instructions? Because you're meant to go up really slowly and adapt, and I was running out of time. And I said, can I just turn it up and, go full bore? And he said, yeah, it's only for women.
Oh, jeez. What a champion the ex-husband was. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go for
Great advice.
It was great advice. So he said, turn it up to 6,500 metres, which any doctor will tell you that's, in the death zone, and sleep in it every night. And because I was running out of time and I needed to get more blood cells and I needed to adjust, because I was scared, because this was at 5,700 metres, these passes, So I thought, well, if I can sleep in this, I'll be okay. So I did that. I turned it right up. And within 2 weeks, I had massive brain problems. I was like memory loss, confusion, not remembering people, things like this. And then I had the bacteria in my body. When you don't have enough oxygen in your body, your bacteria starts to proliferate and you get infections everywhere. So every orifice was doing something you don't want to know. And so I went to the doctor and he listened to my story and he said, what are your SpO2 stats, your oxygen in the night? And I said, around 70%. And he was like, for fuck's sake, you're killing yourself, you're knocking off your brain cells and you've got a hypoxic brain concussion now. So you've actually sensitised yourself to altitude. So good job, you better pull out of this race. And I was like, well, that ain't happening because I've already spent a year getting sponsors and film crews and all the rest of it. And then I went over to Australia doing a preparation race. I did a 100k race over in the Blue Mountains.
Oh, just a little one?
Well, it wasn't, it was really hard, but it was a good prep for what I was going for. Yeah. And I did that, and the next day I was doing a photo shoot for the North Face, who are my sponsors, and I came down on my ankle, because they were out there for a 15-hour photo shoot, right, after a 100k run, and I was knackered, and I came down on my ankle and ripped the ligaments off my left ankle on both sides. So now 10 weeks out from the race, I've got this hypoxic brain concussion, all these bacterial problems, and now I've got ripped ligaments. So it was the worst build-up you can possibly have. But I thought, well, I'm going anyway. So I ended up going over 10 days earlier to prepare, try and get used to the altitude. And I thought, all I got to do is drag my bum across that line and I'll be the first woman, right? You'd think. And I get over to India, 10 days to go, and 7 runners are there. 5 of them are women. 2 are blokes. I don't know what the guys were on, but there's no, women are really good at ultramarathon running because it's not about speed, it's not about muscle size, it's about this. And, we can endure a lot of pain. And so we actually, there's a pretty even playing field. The longer the race, the more even the playing field. And so 5 women, I was like, oh, for crying out loud. I thought I'd be the only one and I'll just get through it and it'll be sweet, But 5 women. 1 woman took a look at the place and got scared and took off again. So we were down to 6. And we had the Indian Army and we had some medical people from America, like doctors and that, come over and study us because they wanted to see what happens to the human body when you go from 3.5 up to 5.7, down to 3.5 and back up to 5.8, all in a non-stop race. Hadn't been studied before, going to that altitudes that fast and running 222 km.
Were there not some kind of alarm bells going then as well about...
Very much.
And also the Indian kind of army as well?
The Indian army were yes, they were, they do all the altitude training up there, so they know what the rules are and how to do it, and they were trying to stop the race because they said it was, dangerous, people are going to die, and the first year it had been run, everyone had ended up in hospital, including the crews, except for this one guy who'd made it. And so we knew that altitude sickness was a very big possibility. So that's why we had these doctors there to study us, but also to take care of us if we got in trouble. And so you have all this fear-mongering going around, right? And you can die this way, you cerebral edema, pulmonary edema, and you're like, oh God, and you've had this terrible build-up anyway. So you're absolutely petrified, but you've promised your sponsors this, you've got all this film crew, you've brought guys in from all around. I had, 5 crew. You brought them from all around the world. You can't back out now, And when I decided...
Well, no, you can.
Well, yeah, a sensible person would have. But I'm I felt like I was obliged, And so I decided, when it came to the point, I actually rang up my dad and this first time, my dad's usually hard ass and, take a teaspoon of concrete and harden up. And this time he said, just come home, my little girl. I don't want you to do this. It's too dangerous. I don't want you to do it. And I was like, ooh, must be really bad. But then I thought, well, I've got to do it. So when I made that decision that I'm doing it, then it was no longer any use worrying about anything. So I said to my crew, I want you to protect me from everyone else, keep my mind safe. You've got to make sure that I'm positive, feed me positivity, tell me how great I'm going to do, tell me how amazing you are, and just protect me. Keep my mind from going there. And they did. They just hammered me with good stuff, and we sat on the fear as best as we could. And then my mood started to pick up and I started to feel a little bit more stronger. And then on the day of the race, you wake up at 4 a.m, you're starting at 6 and you're putting on your gear, and you first wake up and your eyes go and you go, oh no, it's that day. It's D-Day where you've got to go and run 222 Ks. You're not going to be in a bed again for the next 3-4 days, you know. It's going to be tough. And when I'm putting my gear on, that's when I become, in my head, a warrior. Yeah, and this is my connection to my culture, if you like, is I'm envisaging my warrior past. I'm thinking about, you know, I used to do running along, singing Maori battalion songs and stuff like this, just to wake up that warrior in you, and you're becoming this superhero. Yeah, and it's all in your head. But when you change that story in your head, you change your biology, you actually change the chemistry that you're actually coursing through your veins, you get more testosterone, you feel bolder, you feel more courageous, and then you're in the game, you know, you've got your game face on, so to speak. And so, you know, started this race and I headed up the first pass, and I knew the second pass was going to be the one that made it, you know, make or break. And so I was very conservative going up, and, you know, had vomiting and stuff on the way up, an asthma attack on the way down. You got another 24 hours going through this valley. Then you had a heat stroke coming into the second valley and passed out. And then you're getting slower and slower and slower, and now down to a walk. You can hardly breathe because it's like, you know, hardly any air up there. And we're coming into the second valley. I've been out there for 30-something hours at this stage. And in my head, that battle is raging. Can I do it? Can I do it? And I'm looking up the barrel of 35 kilometres straight up these mountains and going, I don't think I can go up there again, you know, and not telling my crew, but not feeling like I'll just go as far as I can go, is what was going on in my head, if I'm honest. And we're heading up this mountain so slowly. I'm down to a walk. I'm really, really sick. I have an asthma attack, and we have like convoys of army trucks coming through, like 50, 60 trucks at a time, that are spewing out unfiltered diesel on top of the altitude problem that you've got on these really dangerous tiny little roads with big cliffs and stuff. And a couple
whilst
of times,
you're having an asthma attack.
Whilst I'm having asthma attacks, and then the temperature starts to drop. So it'd been 40 degrees down in the bottom, and it was heading down towards zero. And it was snowstorm. And we're going up these serpentine, you know, up, slower. I've got every piece of clothing on. My crew are just going above and beyond, trying to keep me moving. And it gets to the point where I'm calculating in my head the whole time, how far is it to the top? And I'm thinking, it's only 2 Ks. I work it out in my head, it's only 2 Ks. I can hold on for 2 Ks. It was about another 45 minutes or so of walking. And then one of my boys comes over, Josh, and he says, no, sorry, Lisa, we've calculated it's 6 Ks. 6 Ks, and we're in the snowstorm. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm completely hypothermic. I'm just lost the plot. And I just sat down on the ground and I broke. And I just said, that's it, guys, I can't do it. And I'm just, you know, that's it. I'm so sorry I've let you down. And my crew, as lovely crew do, they come around and they huddled around me and they tried to protect me. And they were like, it's okay, Lise. We're so proud of you, what you've achieved. You've pushed the limits. You're just amazing. And they gave me permission to fail. And then there was this one guy on my crew who was a journalist, and he came over and he sat down in front of me. And he grabbed me on the ground, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he just looked so angry. And I just looked, you know, I was surprised because all the rest of the boys had been really supportive. And I could tell he wanted to slap me. And he was like, there's no freaking way you are going to fail now, and I'm not going to let you get your ass up off that ground now and move. And I was like taken aback. And that's exactly what I needed. He got me up off the ground and he said, I'm staying out here with you every step of the way. And the other guys, one of the other boys came and stayed out with me, and they walked me up to the top of this mountain in this snowstorm, and they got me over that hump. They literally got me up to the top of this pass, and I got to the top at 5,800 metres, and I had 33 kilometres to go, but it was downhill, and I knew that I'd make it. And to cut a long story short, we got there in 53 hours and 5 minutes. But I was the second woman home. Oh, I was beaten by a 55-year-old grandma who also had asthma from England, you know. So age is no barrier. Your body type's no barrier. Your, you know, things like asthma, your race, your body shape, all of these things don't matter. What matters is that you have what it takes up here, and that you have a good team, you know. Yeah. And we got through together. And, you know, each one of those sort of events is really, you know, teamwork. It's not just the athlete. It's the athlete who gets the medal at the end, but man, those guys went above and beyond. So that was that story, yeah.
Wow.
I've forgotten the question.
I was going to
now.
say, trust the journalists to do something the journalists probably couldn't do themselves. But
Don't worry,
they
I got 'em
obviously
back.
help you get there.
Yeah, I got him back years later. I made him run a few ultras. So.
So you talked about your dad, and obviously the influence of your father, you said, was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Oh, well, you know, we've just got those warrior genes in us. I think most of us Māori have that, you know.
He's a Tamati, yeah?
Yes, he's a Tamati.
From, is it Taranaki?
Te Aotearoa, yeah, Te Aotearoa.
So is he related to the league players?
Yeah. We claim those two, yeah. Some of them we don't claim. Those two we claim. So, yeah, they were Dad's second cousins. First cousin, my second cousin.
Yeah.
So, so it's in our family, sport's in our family. And, you know, Dad grew up, he desperately wanted to represent New Zealand. He wanted to be an All Black. Didn't quite make it. Did very well, but didn't quite make it. But that means his kid had to make it, okay? And I was born as a girl, so I was a big disappointment anyway. If we'd had rugby back in my day, I would have been playing rugby. But he wanted me to be an All Black. He also wanted me to be a SAS soldier and a top businesswoman as well. You know, that was who Dad was. He wanted the best for us. He was a fantastic dad. But that pressure was very, very intense, if you like. And representing New Zealand was one of those really important things for him. He wanted us to represent our country. And so I desperately tried to do that. And I failed, you know. I failed in gymnastics as a young kid. I tried my best, I just didn't have it. So then I tried it in surfing, and my dad was just always so disappointed in me that I'd just get there and then, well, he thought I would, you know, pull out just when I was about to get the breakthrough, when I knew that I didn't have what it took in those sports. But that dream never died. And when I got into running, I found out that you could represent New Zealand in 24-hour racing, which is running around a 400-metre track for 24 hours, the most boring, horrible thing you could possibly do to yourself. But at the end of that was a possible ticket to wear the silver fern. And so for years I tried it. I tried 8 times to do 24-hour races, and you had to reach 185 kilometres, right? And so it's 141 and 144 and 151 and 157 and 161. Each one of these times is 24 hours of running around a damn track. And on the 8th time, after I'd run through New Zealand, I'd run through Death Valley twice, I'd done all the other stuff, I finally stood at the start line of this 24-hour race again to have one last crack at the age of 41. And I got there. I did 194 kilometres in 24 hours. And I got to wear the silver fern at the age of 41. And that was just, I get tears in my eyes just thinking about it, you know, because to go home to my dad and go, there's your freaking silver fern, Dad, stick that on your wall. And, you know, the old bugger, he just said to me, well, it took you a bit longer than I was expecting.
Oh, come on now.
But good on you, you know. And secretly he was super proud, you know, like super proud. And proud of all the stuff that I'd done. But, you know, you carried that with you your whole life, and then you finally got there at 41. And I did one more. I went to the Commonwealth Champs, did a 24-hour race over in England, and that was me done. I'd done that. I'd ticked the box, you know. That was pretty epic.
Wow. It blows me away because 41 years of life with that in your mind.
Yeah.
Did it feel like success at the time?
Yeah, it did that time. That was just, you know, there was no stadiums full of people shouting your name. We're, you know, a bunch of weirdo idiots running around a track for 24 hours. You know, it's not the big thing, but it was a big thing for me to finally wear the silver fern, you know. And I tell you what, to run 194 Ks in 24 hours is a bloody hard thing to do, you know. So I was pretty proud of that, yeah. And, you know, but my sport has cost me a lot too, you know. I've had a lot of health issues and, you know, consequences from what I've done to my body. Over the last few years especially, I've been trying to undo some of the damage that I've done, things like kidneys, kidney damage. Because when you're doing this, you push your body through absolute extremes and you're breaking down your own muscle tissue, so you get something called rhabdomyolysis, and then dehydration on top of that, and that can cause, you know, kidney damage. And so it's not really severe, but if I carried on now, I could, you know, end up on dialysis. So I've retired from the big stuff now. which is
Does that scare you?
Yeah, it does, and still it's a battle for me. You know, like who are you if you're not that? But 3 years ago, I had something else happen in my life which completely changed my focus anyway. And so it had got to a point where I'd done pretty much everything I wanted to do. I was pretty happy with what I'd achieved. And then 3.5 years ago, my mum had a aneurysm, which is a bleed in the brain. And when this happened, of course, my life just changed overnight. Bang. She's always been the biggest supporter, the one that was always there crewing for me. I mean, when I ran through New Zealand, she was following me in the car for 42 days at like 9 k's an hour through the country. That's what sort of mum she is, you know. She would be terrified that I'd be doing some of these things, but she would never say to me, don't do it. She'd always encourage me to follow my dreams and do what I wanted to do, and just an amazing woman. And so when this happened, I was just completely, blown to pieces. The whole family was. And we had some terrible mishaps when she first had the aneurysm, and the doctors didn't diagnose what was happening. And I realised I had to, if I wanted her to survive and I wanted her to have a chance at life again, then I better up my game and find out what the hell was going on and to research.
What were the doctors saying?
Well, when we first she collapsed at home, massive headaches, and she was rushed up to the hospital in an ambulance. The ambulance driver had said, I think she's having a stroke or something like that. Said that to the doctor.
The driver.
The driver did. He's a paramedic, but the doctor ignored him, said, she's having a migraine. And just ignored her, left her in the cubicle there. And then we came up, Mum never complains about anything. She's the type of person who would die quietly, and not disturb anybody. So I knew that she was in deep trouble, and I didn't know what to ask for. And for hours upon hours, nothing happened. They were just saying, we've given her painkillers, it'll be all right. And after 4 hours, she had another real, apparently it's one of the worst pains that you can ever have when the blood is going through the brain. And I had a friend who's a paramedic who'd crewed for me on a number of races, and I rang her and I said, can you get up here and kick some butt, because they're not taking us seriously. They're treating her like a neurotic old lady, and there's something wrong and I don't know what to ask for. She came up, she took one look at Mum and said she's having a stroke or something like that. So went to the doctor and told him to get a CT scan right now, and she knew the system and how it all worked. And she said, do it now. And so he finally relented after 6 hours. Relented, got the CT scan, blood right throughout the brain. And, they all, Megan looked over at me, and I've never seen fear in her eyes before, but, she looked like she's not going to make it. The doctors were like rushing around trying to organise an ambulance to get her through to Wellington Hospital, to the neurological unit. And it was all go then. And I remember my dad coming up to me, who's been married to my mum for 54 years or something, and going, well, we better start preparing the funeral, Gee. And I grabbed him, just like my mate did in the Himalayas, and I said, Dad, she's alive and we're going to fight like 40 buggers to get her back. And I want you to go, when people are in crisis like that, you have to give them jobs. So I said, Dad, you go and organise this, get hold of Auntie so-and-so and, get the boys down to Wellington. I stayed with Mum. Another 12 hours went by before the air ambulance came, and then we got her down to Wellington. 18 hours it took to get her into surgery. Now the gold standard is 1 hour, to survive something like this. So they got her in 18 hours later, put a shunt in the brain which relieves all the blood and takes the blood off the brain, and then it was a waiting game basically to see whether she survived. And I didn't understand anything about brain aneurysms and how it would unfold. I just knew she was in deep, deep trouble. And then for the next 3 weeks, she was in and out of coma, basically. And she kept losing different parts of her brain as the time went on, because the blood and the brain matter don't mix, and they cause spasms, and it kills off different parts of the brain. So she was losing more and more and more of herself. And she would come to for a little bit and then she'd be gone again.
And were the doctors saying at that time, prognosis is not looking good?
No, I mean, they were desperately just trying to keep her alive, and at that stage, and then they said, we won't know anything until she comes out of this, and then, then we'll see. And she survived this 3-week period where these vasospasms, they're called, were happening, and then she stabilised. But when she came around, she had nothing, basically. She had hardly any higher function. So she had no memory, no speech, or a couple of words. She had no ability to control any of her limbs. So she could move her arms, like this side had been paralysed, but she could move, this was starting to move, but she couldn't like lift a hand. If I said lift, she didn't understand what that meant or anything. Unable to sit or anything like that.
So just to go back to the 3-week period, what are you thinking? Are you applying the disciplines that you learned in ultramarathons?
Yeah.
The pain and the constant messaging of you can't do this, you can't do this. Is that going in your mind at the same time as you're trying to help
Very
your mum,
much so. It's the lessons about leadership, really. These are the stuff like, how do I, like I've got 2 younger brothers who were completely, lost as well, and a dad who's falling to pieces, and realising, okay, it's up to you to try to give some guidance to the family. And then I'm the one I'm into researching, I'm into health, I'm into studying everything. So I just went on overdrive, operational mode. Right, I'm going to learn I'm going to read every medical textbook, I'm going to read every study, I'm going to find there is something out there in this world that will help my mum, and I'm going to find it. So I terrorised the doctors. I was up on everything. Within a couple of weeks that she was there, I learned so much about aneurysms and brain and rehab and everything. And I picked up things the doctors didn't pick up, because I'm sitting there the whole time next to her, right? Or we were taking it in turns with my brothers, but I'm seeing her and I know her, whereas a doctor comes in and they've got 5 minutes before they go to the next patient, right? So they're not picking everything up. So it ended up things like sleep apnea that I picked up later on down the road when she was in the hospital in the rehab unit, that she had sleep apnea. She wasn't breathing well at night. She was knocking off even more brain cells. I picked those sort of things up. And then I started studying something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is what they use for divers when they have dive accidents, but they now know that it helps people with gangrene, burns, like wound healing, but also brain injury. And it's not accepted practice here in New Zealand. They use it for the burns and the gangrene and stuff, but not the brain stuff here. But there's 50 years worth of research on this, and it's indisputable that it is beneficial for brain injury. And I watched video after video and study after study on the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So then I decided, I've got to get her this. And so then I had a real fight with the medical system, because she was now in the rehab in New Plymouth, and after 3 months she wasn't improving, she wasn't going to, doing any better, and they said, we've got to put her in a hospital level care facility. She's 24/7 round the clock care, 2 people. You're never going to cope with her at home. And I just absolutely refused to put her in a home. And I had real big battles, to the point where, I have a very big, scary-looking brother, and I had to bring him in on occasion to make sure they listened to me, that I wasn't going to put her in a home, and you better give us the resources that we need, which was just caregivers in the morning and the evening just to help the family cope, And the social worker saying to me, there is no way in hell you're going to cope, and you're going to be coming back here in 2 weeks begging for our help. And you're going to, she's going to have this, that, and the other happen to her. And I came and I threw my books at him, and I said, this is who I am, and I'm not putting my mum in a home, so you better get used to it. And we had this big, big battle. I got what I wanted at the end of the day, because I've got a very scary looking bro. And that, I got her home. So once I got her home, then I could start doing the rehab stuff that I'd been researching. So
hang on. You get her home.
Yep.
And you start trying to put a plan in place.
Yep.
When, it's just some study, right?
Yep.
And you go,
I'm
right.
no doctor. I'm no doctor.
But again, same kind of discipline, right?
Exactly.
Here's the problem.
And
how do I deal with this?
And this is where the value of doing like these sort of sports or pushing your own boundaries is so beneficial, because you don't
everyone at the time is saying this can't be done.
Yep. You're always being told it's impossible, and I was being told left, right, and centre this is impossible. But when you have an attitude as I'm going to go through this wall any which way, and I'm going all in. When you go all in on something, you're much more likely to succeed. You might not succeed still, but you're more likely to if you have that attitude. And so I was just ready to fight like crazy and do whatever it took. And so I came across this hyperbaric, and I studied under a Dr. Harch in America. I worked out protocols, and then I had to get her access to a chamber, and they don't grow on cheese. And I actually found a chamber that was in a dive centre, and they kindly let me use their chamber. I had to go and sign a legal waiver, and get medical sign-off, which I did. And as soon as I got out of the hospital and she was good enough to come home, the very next day we were down there and we started the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And we had 33 treatments at this place. Amazing people gave us, 2 hours of their time every day. And after the 33 treatments, my mum started to wake up. She started to come back. And then the chamber got taken off on a contract. And so I lost my access to it. But I could see that it was working. And you were meant to have like 40 sessions and have a month off and then another 40. And that was the protocol that I developed. And so I only had 33, and then we had a month off, and she started to make real gains. So she started.
So what do you mean by real gains?
Like speaking, like a little bit of a flicker of intelligence behind her eyes, some memory coming back, little bits of things. So she still can't sit properly, she still can't do anything, but you're seeing her come back a little bit.
She's acknowledging you and
yes,
brothers.
So she's starting to remember who I am sometimes, She's starting to use a few words. Just little things like this that you could see, and she's trying to move and things like that. So then I went, okay, I've lost this chamber. I mortgaged the house. I bought a chamber. I installed it in her house. I put her through the next 150 treatments. And then as she started to come back, the more treatments that I did, then I had something to work with. And then I started to study things like functional neurology and nootropics, which is brain-enhancing drugs, and changed her diet completely, and and physio, of course. So all of these aspects that made up her training plan. So I had basically an 8-hour training plan every day for her that involved different aspects of her rehabilitation. And the hardest thing was her brain fatigue. So she would fatigue very quickly. And what I noticed in the hospitals is that when they had brain fatigue, they'd quit for the day. Well, I'd quit for 5 minutes and then I'd be back doing something else. I'd find something else that her brain wasn't tired at. And so I started to get her back little by little. After 18 months, she could roll over in bed. 18 months to roll over in bed, yeah? And then she started to be able to stand and walk on a walker, and we pull her around. She had no self-motion or anything, but she started to toddle forward. And then I got her in between the parallel bars eventually, and she started to be able to walk in between parallel bars. Now I had to train her whole spatial awareness. All her balance systems were gone. But the brain, there's a Neuro Plasticity, you might have heard of that term. That means the brain can adapt given time. And even an old adult's brain, at 74, 75 years old now, you can adapt the brain. So she started to, the part of the brain that was dead, another part of the brain started to take over, and her balance system started to come back. And so as she progressed, I just kept one step ahead of her, searching for answers, searching for the best experts, studying,
What are these experts saying to you? I mean, I guess you're kind of watching clips and stuff, but you're probably communicating with them going, this is where I'm at, can you help? What are they saying to you? They say, who are you and why are you doing this?
A lot of it's just self-research, watching videos, studying things, reading books, talking to people that I could get, we had, a neurophysio that I had contact with, a functional neurologist person who taught me all these things to do with eyes that helped with their balance, even things like yoga and deep breathing and meditation, and all of these things became part of her program. And now 3.5 years later, Mum is completely normal. She's reading, writing, walking, talking. She's got her full driver's license, her full power of attorney back. She's my little miracle. And I'm just, I've been, like, the whole way through, I had people telling me, you can't do this, it's impossible. Why are you putting her through such an arduous, because it's a pretty brutal regime that I have to put her through. Why are you torturing her, especially in the early days? Why are you doing all this to her? Just let her be and make her comfortable. But I don't do comfortable. I don't do comfortable.
Well, that's obvious from Sahara Desert, Libyan Desert.
When you're comfortable, you're not growing, you're not learning, you're not achieving, yeah? And I think that no matter if you're 5 years old or you're 105, you need to have goals and challenges. And the lucky thing with my mum is that once she started to come back to herself and she started to have consciousness again, she's as determined as I am. And she just does whatever I say to do. She doesn't argue, she just goes and does it to the best of her ability. And every single day we work on her, we're still working, like she's still only 90% back. She hasn't, she still has trouble with her walking, like drops on one side and, things like that. But she can walk 2 kilometres. She can, we're at the gym every day.
So what was she doing today? Give us an example.
Yeah, like today is one day off because I'm not there, so she's been out with Dad restauranting and things like that. And I had, words were there before. Have you done this? And have you done your walk? And have you? But I'm there unless I'm doing something like this and I'm away for work. I'm there 7 days a week, and every day we're training every day.
Hang on, you said unless you're away for work.
Yeah.
So you're still working at the same time.
Yeah. So I run 2 companies, and I do my work before I go to see her, and then when I get back from her, I work till late in the night most nights, and but this is things that you learn to do, and you can do it for a certain amount of time. And it's not to say I haven't burnt out and I haven't been broken, and it's not the ideal way to live. And I certainly hope that things will change. And as Mum's gotten better, now it's down to about 5 hours a day with her. And she's actually independent enough now so she can go and do her own training after I've gone, But
And doesn't need any support person with her? She just has a program and goes away and does it?
Yeah, she can do that now.
Believable.
Yeah, she's a miracle. And she's 77 years old. And I've just finished her book, which is going to come out probably around February next year, telling this story, because this story is so powerful and so important for other people to understand. That I want people to, it doesn't matter if it's not about brain rehab per se, although you'll learn a lot if that's your problem or you need help with. It's a book about mindset. It's a book about attitude. It's about love. It's about never ever giving up and beating the odds when you, and those are the stuff that I've learned from my sport, if you like.
Yeah.
And that love, when you have motivation, in this case it's your mum, what the hell wouldn't you do for her, then that will fire you through the worst of obstacles, you'll keep going, and you can still fail, I could have done all of this and failed. It's not to say that couldn't have happened, but I would have not lived with the regret of not knowing, could I have brought her back? I've been on another journey this year. For years we've been trying to have a baby, my husband and I, and we met quite late in life, and I'd done a lot of damage to my body and we hadn't been able to, and so me head through the wall, I went and found a lovely surrogate mum to help us out. And
so this is going on at the same time as
this is
working with your mum and trying to run 2 companies.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, got that.
So this is just this year, right? And so she got pregnant. When was it, last November? And so we were ecstatic, And then was it now 4 months ago? Our little baby Joseph was born 3 months too early, and he had major complications and he died. So sometimes you can chuck everything at it and you fail, Ultimately, we lost our little boy, On the other hand, I got my mum back. But I haven't changed my attitude to the way I approach things. When I lost Joseph, I stepped back and I thought, did I cause this? Because I pushed so hard for that baby, to make it happen. When I tried to, myself for years and tried everything possible, no go, right, I'll find another way. If my body's not going to do it, I'll find somebody. Found somebody, put her through all of that horror, put my husband through all of that horror, our little boy, and you just cannot know. That's life,
Why would you think, and I'm only raising it because you said it, why would you think in your own mind, did I cause this?
Because I'm the type of person to make shit happen, and I made this happen. And then I saw the suffering that I'd caused, if you like, because, to myself, obviously, but to my husband, to little baby Joseph, who didn't survive, to my surrogate's family, So, and now I look at it and I go, I understand that that's a silly way to look at it. Yeah. And so does she. She's blaming herself, I'm blaming me, and all of that is a waste of time. But for a little while there, I was like, did I cause this because I'm such a head through the wall person? And did this need to happen to me to change the way I approach things? But I actually think, I think, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, and you can only give your best. You can only try your best. And I won't, die not knowing. I won't regret not putting everything into whatever it is that I wanted to achieve, And, although this is a sad story and it ended sadly, we've taken the blessings from his little short life. My husband who's a fireman, right? And should have been an officer years ago. He's a brilliant fireman. He's very, very capable. Never had the confidence to step up. After we lost Joseph, he was like, well, bugger it. I'm going to go for it. My son never got to live. I'm going to live my life full on now, And he did, and he stepped up, So just little blessings like that where we change our perspective and bring gratitude. Even though we lost our baby, it's about understanding the blessings that he did bring us and then treasuring those, because that's all we've got left. The connection with my surrogate family now, we're sisters forever,
Do you apply the same thinking to business, to the companies that you're running? You
Yes.
do?
Yeah.
How does that go?
Yeah, well, I'm not a billionaire yet.
But that's not the objective, though.
No.
What do you do? Tell me what you do.
So I have two companies. One's called Running Hot Coaching. So I have an online run training program, and we do things like epigenetic testing, different health tests. Epigenetics. How do I explain that in 5 minutes?
In a way that silly fella he can understand it.
Yeah, no, it's like personalised coaching. Like it gives us. So this has been developed by hundreds of scientists over the last 20 years, right? And epigenetics means that epi is above genetics. So in other words, your genetics are not your determining factor as to who you become. Yes, it's a blueprint, but it's the environment and it's how you respond. So if you give your body good food, for example, it's going to have the genetics express themselves in one way and not in another way. If you abuse your body, drink too much alcohol, do drugs, then you'll have other genes express themselves. In other words, we're in control of our genes, if you like. And it's so this gives us as coaches an ability to be able to tailor make our programs, because we can understand what the right foods are for people, what the right time of the day to eat, what the type of exercise to do, when their hormones are replacing, what their personality types, all based on their genes and how they're expressing now.
Why do you want to do that?
Well, I mean, I've been a coach for a long time, and for me, I'm all about raising people's potential. Like, we all have massive untapped potential. And I'm really interested in tapping into our potential, the best that we can be, whether that's being an athlete, whether that's being as a corporate person or whatever, or just as a nice, good person in this world. It's reaching our potential. And so, that's just one of the tools that we have in our kit. And so that's one of our companies. And the other one, so we coach people from all around the world, and it's an online run training system. And then I have a mindset, I call it Mindset University, and it's all about developing mental toughness, all the stuff that I've been talking about today in the course, so that you can, learn from it. And then on the other side, I have I do a lot of speaking and media and podcasts. I have my own podcast called Pushing the Limits. Check it out, everyone.
Free plug? Free plug on this podcast?
Definitely. Come and see me at lisatamati.com. Got to get that in. Yeah, but speaking, a lot of corporate speaking, a lot of motivational speaking, that type of thing. Running seminars and books. So Mum's book is hopefully going to come out probably in February. That's called Relentless, so if anyone sees that. And I've got a couple of other books as well that I've written. Yeah, so life's busy, and it's all for me. I'm really trying to, I want to build an empire. Not an empire, I mean, we all want money. Money's a good motivator, but it's not the only motivator. I want to have an empire, and what I mean by that is I want to influence as many people's lives as I possibly can with the lessons that I have to share, to give. And whether that's in the running or whether that's in mindset and in the corporate space or in the health space.
What would you say to someone who hears this, watches this podcast, hears this amazing story, both your own story around your running career, but also around what's happened with your mum, the companies that you're working on, that kind of thing, and they say, I'm inspired, but I just don't think I can get there. They're not. It's not pessimism.
No.
It's just that constant voice in your head that really thinks.
We all have it.
So what do you say to people who will listen to this and go, I just don't think I can do it, Lisa?
Yeah, so we all have this, we have this subconscious programming in our heads. Like we can read a self-help book and we think, right, I've got it sussed now, I know the way forward and I know how to improve my life, and then we don't do it. And why don't we do it? Because we have a subconscious programming that is contradictory to what our actual consciousness wants. So what's really important is to go back and understand what is it that I've been programmed with. Now, this is stuff that we've downloaded in our childhood, typically in our first 7 years, when we were just sponges and sucking it all up. So we took in everything from our parents, our community, our friends, and we have these limiting beliefs because of these programs that we have in our mind. And as adults, then we come up against this. Give for an example, as a child you're told you're not worthy, you're useless. You're useless at school or something. You're not got any brains. It was probably totally untrue. It was some teacher having a bad day, right? But that's downloaded into your subconscious as being fact. Because as a child, you don't judge anything. You just take that on board. I'm hopeless, And then that sits in your psyche for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And then you keep sabotaging yourself when you're trying to go forward because the subconscious programming is that I'm dumb. I can't do that. Or I'm useless, or I don't deserve to be wealthy, or I don't deserve this or that. And so our reality reflects what's in our subconscious. So our whole brain, and this is work that's been done by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a father of epigenetics, and he says that 1% of our life is our conscious thinking. There's this tiny area in the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that has all our conscious thinking and our willpower and the other 95 to 99% of our brain is operating all these systems subconsciously. So if we have all this negative programming inside of us, we can bang our heads against the wall with our prefrontal cortex and we're not going to have the breakthrough. So we have to look at what is the programming that's going on there. If you grew up in, your average Kiwi household, didn't have a lot of money and, you were told things like money doesn't grow on trees and, we can't afford this. And so you have, or that rich people are bad. Anybody who's rich has probably ripped someone off, all these things that you pick up along the way, just as an example. And so when you become an adult and you want to make money and you want to get wealthy and you want to look after your family and you keep running into brick walls because you're still got that old psyche, that old subconscious playing, money is bad. You don't deserve to be wealthy. Money doesn't grow on trees. It's hard to earn money. All of that stuff is playing in the background and that becomes your reality then. So if you can go in and reprogram it, and this is the interesting part, how do you reprogram it? Things like self-hypnosis or going to a hypnotist or just catching your thoughts. Catch yourself throughout the day. What am I thinking? And you'll catch yourself being negative probably about 70 to 80% of the time. Yeah. And if you can just start to become aware of those thoughts and catch them in the bud and going, whoop, I'm going down that path again, and start to rewire, like I did with my mum, rewire those neural networks so that they become new beliefs and new programs that then empower you to go forward. And you don't start at the top of the hill. You start at the bottom and you work your way up, little bit by little bit by little bit. Once again, Mum's story of chop it into tiny pieces. Today, I can affect the way I see the world in, when I'm sitting in traffic and someone cuts me off, instead of giving him the bird, I should be like, it's okay, I'm taking some deep breaths. He cannot make me angry. I am responsible for my mood on the inside. That might have been not nice what he did, but that's not the point. The point is, how do I react to it? And then when we start to do this over and over and over again, we start to take control of our emotions a lot more. And not to say that this is easy or that I've got that sussed, but it's something that I work on constantly, is trying to improve those thought processes so you're having a more positive and attracting the right things into your life instead of attracting the bad things in.
So the listeners to this and those who watch this podcast, we're calling it Indigenous 100.
Yeah.
It's focused on Indigenous communities and what they can potentially learn from our speakers like you. So give me the first step. Because one of the ones in my mind is, you talked about first lamppost,
Yeah.
Māori Battalion song. You know, those
Psyching yourself up.
Psyching yourself up.
Yeah.
Is that the first step?
So the first step is to find yourself some good mentors. If you have I'll rephrase that. If you have people around you who are negative, who are naysayers to your dreams, then you need to, sometimes you can't chop them up because they're your family or whatever, your friends or whatever. But find people who will support you in your vision, who get what you're about, who understand you and help mentor you through that. And that's, if you can't afford anybody, you go and find a podcast like this podcast. You go and find the expert on YouTube. Whatever it takes to start to reprogram where you want to go and who you want to become. And you start there. So that would be my first step, I think.
Wow, that's awesome. You can hear the rain thundering down on the roof at the moment.
There's a storm out there.
Again, I'm trying to ignore that, right? Because I've got in my mind, I'm like, no, don't ignore the rain.
Ignore the rain.
It's all good.
It'll be good.
All right. So as we start to sum up, because I actually didn't think this is how this was going to go. I thought we were going to talk about you and your career, and I'm blown away. I did anticipate that, but for a whole bunch of reasons. How does let's take your father and your brothers, because of what you've done with your mum, what are the conversations you have as a family now?
Let me tell you a little story. Like my brother Dawson and I, sibling rivalry all the way through our young years, and I was the older sister, the bossy one, as you can imagine. And we didn't always see eye to eye. And when I came back from Austria and I came back to New Zealand and I started doing things like Death Valley, and he was a professional rugby player. And I was searching, for sponsors and trying to be in the media and so on in order to get my dream into reality. And he ripped me to shreds and said, look, you're going to disgrace the family. Who the hell do you think you are? You're not good enough to do that event. There's no way in hell you're going to do it. Why are you courting the media? Why are you trying to get publicity? You're a limelight seeking person, yeah? When I was a rugby player, I didn't, I tried to stay out of the media. And I said, yeah, but you got everything given to you. I have to fight for everything. And, this was a really bad argument, that, and that was his attitude, you're not, and people in your immediate family, they're often the ones who will tell you can't do something. Who the hell do you think you are? You're not good enough for that. And the thing is, you have to know inside, that little voice inside you that says, and I can, and I will, and I'll show you. And you use that as motivation to push yourself through. Fast forward a couple of years and I'd done a whole lot of stuff. And my brother came to the finish line when I ran through New Zealand, and he was with me for the last couple of days. And he came over and he took my hat off and he said, sis, I have to say, I take my hat off to you. I was completely wrong and you're the toughest bitch I know. And he gave me a big hug. And from that day forward, he was my biggest supporter because he'd seen that I did what I said I was going to do. So sometimes we have to go and actually do what we say we're going to do and prove ourselves before people will take us seriously. And the other thing is just ignore the naysayers and keep going, because you will always have naysayers. In Mum's journey, people constantly telling me it's impossible she'll get a driver's license, it's impossible she'll walk, it's impossible. She's doing it all, and when you overcome those, just don't let the naysayers get you. I think is my message. Yeah. And sometimes they're your closest family and they will come around now. And with my brother, with going through this with Mum, my brother from the get-go, he was lost, and he's a real mummy's boy. He loves his mum and he'll do anything for her. And he's seen what I've done every step of the way, and now he has the biggest respect. And he sends every one of his friends to me for, to learn about health and stuff, Go and see my sister Lee, she's like a doctor, and I'm not. But the thing is, he believes in me, he backs me now every step of the way. When I tried to make, Mum drive the car, he was, even I'd done all this stuff and he still said, no way. There's no way she's ever going to drive the car. She can't even drive a wheelchair around the bloody house. How's she going to drive? You're ridiculous. That's being really ridiculous. And then 9 months later, she had a full driver's license. Wow. And once again, he came back and went, okay. I should stop doubting what you say.
You would have thought he would have learned a thing or two by then.
Oh, he's a slow learner. but he's the biggest supporter now, you know,
Wow.
and he's fantastic with mum and dad and looks after them. You know, he has them living with him now, and you know, you need those people to back you up. You know,
I reckon you're going to change people's lives just from this 1 hour conversation that you and I have had. Actually, it hasn't even been a conversation. I've sat here kind of blown away the whole time as you've contributed. And I've done very little, but I think you are going to change people's lives.
Well, thank you.
I hope you keep doing it. I hope you keep going. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Julian.
And the last thing I want to do before we conclude is, can you give my love to your mother for me?
Yeah, I'll give her a big hug.
I wish you all the best. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate that and the opportunity to share my story with you guys. It's really awesome.
Thank you for being a part of Indigenous 100.
Thanks, mate.
Come here.